What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here to talk a little bit of Fantasy Cruncher setup for this Chiefs-Chargers showdown tonight. It's got a 54 total. This should be a really fun game, so I'm excited to attack it and to show you how I plan to set up my Fantasy Cruncher. Now, this first thing that I'm doing, I've already set up my columns, the columns, my quick view that I'm going to use in Fantasy Cruncher this year, so I'm just going to do that right now. You'll have to set this up yourself, but all it does is rearrange what this screen looks like. So I'm going to click my Showdown settings, quick view. You can set this up just by kind of rearranging these columns the way you want them. I like to be able to easily see the ownership column, my projection, how often I'm using a player, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how I like to set up my Fantasy Cruncher screen, but this is really just a visual issue. It has nothing to do with my actual settings. Now, to get to those settings, I'm going to go up to advanced options up here. I've already chosen the Chiefs Chargers game here in the slate, and then I'm going to go to advanced settings, and this is where we really get into the meat of it. Unique players per lineup, I like to keep that at 1 player for showdown slates. Talked about this last week. If you didn't watch this video, I'll go over it again more briefly. Team salary, I don't use anything in the minimum box, but I do set a maximum team salary just as a way to get unique. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I plan to use. I don't even know what that number is going to be yet this week. It varies week to week. I kind of look at what lineups look at different salary ranges, but I'd recommend leaving at least like $600 there, just because if you use much more salary than that, you're likely to be duplicated by a lot of other lineups. Now, there are other ways to get unique. So if you get unique in a lot of other ways, you could use the full salary and still be relatively unique. But just an easy way to get different on these showdown slates is to leave a little bit of salary on the table. So I like to leave at least 600 here. I typically leave more than that, but it's all about your risk tolerance there. In this offensive players versus defense, I set this actually to 5. Now, I rarely play 5 offensive players against the opposing defense, but I like to at least leave that open as a possibility. If it projects well enough, I'm okay with doing that. More often than not, I'm probably going to be, only using a few players against the defense. But again, it's just another way to get unique here, because not a lot of people who are hand building are going to build a lineup that has 5 Chiefs and the Chargers defense on the other side. Because what are the odds that the 5 Chiefs players are going to go off and the Chargers defense is also going to go off? But really, Chargers defense scores a touchdown, they might be the highest scoring player for the Chargers if the offense really stumbles, or just, point per dollar player. So I think it makes sense to leave that at 5. That's what I typically do. Hey guys, we've got a no-brainer offer for you from BetMGM today. Bet just $10, and if any team scores a touchdown tonight in the Chiefs-Chargers game, you'll win $200. We won't see many sure things like this game with a 54 total, so I would recommend jumping on this offer now to win your free $200. Just click the link in the video description below to claim it. In terms of exposure cap, I leave this at 100% for NFL Showdown, and I adjust in other ways. I adjust projections to get to exposures that I like to different players. You might want to use the thumbs up or thumbs down on certain players to get to different exposure levels. I also do go in usually in the on the main screen. So this is if I set this if I set this to anything other than 100%, it'll affect every player, including captains. So what I actually like to do is, after the fact, on the main screen, I go in and just in the captains column, I usually will set a cap on a universal cap on captain, so I don't have 100% of one player in the captain. There might be weeks that there's an exception to that where I actually am willing to play a lot more of one captain. I don't think that is going to be the case this week, so I'll set a cap there. As far as randomness goes, it really comes down to, again, how much you want Fantasy Cruncher to be making decisions for you, how much you want to control. I actually like to let Fantasy Cruncher do a lot of it for me. I don't like to set caps on individual players to make sure that I get exactly how much I want of every player, to make sure that every lineup looks exactly how I want. So I actually leave randomness fairly high. I put it at about 50% for NFL Showdown. I think that's a pretty good number. But if you want complete control over your lineups, you just leave that at 0%. You set caps on players, and there's a lot of different ways to take advantage of Fantasy Cruncher. But for me, leaving that at 50%. Minimum projection to include in your lineups. So what this is telling me is, currently, no player that has a projection lower than 3 is going to make it into any of my lineups. I don't want that to be the case. I'd like to have some players in my lineups who don't project very well, the random tight end who's going to score a touchdown, even though he only projects for 1.5 points. I want him to be in my lineup. Of course, I still have this set at 2, so that player still would not get into my lineup. I'll probably give some players a little boost to make sure that they are making it into my lineup set. But because it's Showdown, things get weird. I like to have the possibility that players who don't project all that well, but still might have some opportunity, can get into my lineups. So I'm going to lower that to 2, and then I'll probably actually end up raising some projections as well. That's a different approach. I could have probably left that at 3 because most likely any player that I want to potentially use in my lineup set, I'm going to be raising their projection above 3 anyway. But it's easier just to lower that to 2 and kind of see what happens to start. I will allow for up to 5 players from either team. I don't mind a 5-1 onslaught at all. So happy with that there. I think that covers everything in the general tab. Hey guys, if you're new to Stokastic and you want to give our tools a chance, now is a great opportunity to do so. Get access to all of our NFL DFS tools 100% free for 3 days. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools for NFL DFS that we have to offer on Stokastic.com, including new tools such as our lineup generator and player compare, as well as player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, our boom bust tool, and so much more. Click the link in the description of this video below to join to activate your 3-day free trial now. Please note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included with this trial offer. I'm going to skip over projections tab, position stacks tab, team stacks tab. I don't use any of those in setting up my Fantasy Cruncher. I just go straight to the groups tab. And then I'll show you some groups that I like to create. All right, so my first group, I'm going to do a Mahomes at captain group. And now I'll use, so the very top here, you'll see Mahomes in this set of players twice. One, Mahomes at captain, and then of course Mahomes at flex. So I'm just gonna, for this group, I'm gonna choose Mahomes at captain as my key player. So you have 2 options here. I'm choosing the key player. He's gonna be the only key player for me in this group. And now I'm going to sort by position here. And I'm just going to go through and select every Chiefs pass catcher and add them into the secondary group. So they're not going to be key players, but they're going to be in the secondary group. And I'm just looking here in any player that has a projection and has that Chiefs logo. So Juju, MBS, Watson, Mecole, Sky Moore, Travis Kelce. And I'm actually debating leaving Travis Kelce out of this group. And the reason being that I'm going to get to a lot of Travis Kelce, whether I force him in there a lot. He just projects so well. And I do have concerns about when I have Mahomes at captain. Would it be enough to have Mahomes with just Kelce? I think I'm just going to set this to use at least one player from the group. I could set it at 2 and include Kelce. I think for this group, what I might actually do is exclude Kelce from here. My concern being Mahomes and Kelce are very close in salary. And anytime Mahomes throws to Kelce, Kelsey's getting more points than Mahomes just based on DraftKings scoring. You get more points per, you get a point per reception. You don't get that from the quarterback. You get more points per yard, more points per touchdown. And given that their salary is so close, you just have such a tight window there for Kelce to have a big enough game to be in the flex spot, but Mahomes to still outscore him. I think I have enough concern there that I'm going to allow Kelce to be in these lineups, but I don't want Mahomes to be in the captain spot with just Kelce in the flex spot because Mahomes is going to need to score in other ways outside of Kelce. And that could be on the ground. Mahomes does run a little bit. He could score a rushing touchdown here or there. But, more likely he's going to have to put up some points with some of these other receiving options. So I think I'm actually going to make this group. I'm going to exclude Kelce from it. And I'm not going to do anything to, say I don't want Kelce in my Mahomes lineups. I'm just not going to force him in there, and he's going to get in there naturally because he projects so well. So I'm going to add Jody Forst into this group. And I'm actually going to include running backs as well, and that includes fullbacks because Mahomes from time to time will throw touchdowns to his fullbacks, will throw touchdowns to his running backs plenty. So I'm going to include all of these running backs in the group as well. All right, looks like that is all of his pass catching options outside of Kelce. Now, you could just say only apply plus minus adjustments if you don't want to force any of these players in. Theoretically, Mahomes could be in the captain spot and have just Kelce as a receiver. He could throw, one touchdown to Kelsey, and Kelsey doesn't do much else. Mahomes has a rushing touchdown. Theoretically, in a low-scoring game, Mahomes could do that. It's kind of up to you. I think that either option is viable. You could just do only apply plus minus adjustments, or you could say if any key players use this is the default. If any key players use, so that's Mahomes, then at least one player from this group in your lineup. I think that is what I'm going to leave it at. I'm thinking that I'm going to want at least one of these players in my lineup if I have Mahomes at captain. But I'm still going to give them boost too, just to get more of these players if I have Mahomes at captain. And again, given the stated concerns that I have with Kelsey, with players that are too close in projection and or salary, I'm more likely to give bigger boosts to players that don't project quite as well and have generally. It's more about the salary, I guess. The lower salary guys, Justin Watson at 200, he puts up 9 fantasy points. He could very well be in the optimal tonight, and there's no real concerns with him outscoring Patrick Mahomes at that point. So I think these guys that have lower salaries, I'm more willing to give them bigger boosts here. And these aren't huge boosts that I'm giving, just a little over 10%. I might end up, you could go back and give even bigger boosts than this. I typically kind of start small, and then if I might go back and adjust a little bit. I don't usually give tons huge boosts. I just want to make it a little bit more likely that if I have Mahomes in the captain spot, that I end up with more of his pass catchers. And typically I actually give lower boost to the running back, so I'm going to do that here. All right, so that is an example of a group that I like to set. That's just my Mahomes captain group. And then I'll go through and I'll do the same thing with Justin Herbert. Pretty similar in that he can definitely do plenty of damage on the ground, but I'm also going to generally want at least one pass catcher with Justin Herbert. And it also, with Justin Herbert, similar in that he can do it with running backs or tight ends. Doesn't need to be a receiver. So same thing, I'm adding Justin Herbert, captain, as my key player. I'm going to go through and add all these different receiving options. And for Herbert, I think I am including Mike Williams. I think the salary disparity there is a little bit bigger than it is between Mahomes and Kelsey. So it just gives you a little bit bigger window for Mike Williams to put up a big enough score to be in the flex spot without outscoring Justin Herbert. And then once again, you could make that same decision again. I think I'm going to leave it so I need at least one player from this group to be in my lineup with Justin Herbert. You could consider doing 2 as well, but for me, I think I'm just going to do 1 for now. And again, giving bigger boosts to the guys with lower salaries. There is some projection component here as well, just because if a guy projects so well that I'm like, he's going to be getting into so many of my lineups anyway, I don't necessarily want to give as big of a boost just because I don't want to have, 100% correlation between Justin Herbert and Josh Palmer, for example. Trey McKitty is an example of a guy, he doesn't project that well, but I think he's going to get into a lot of lineups naturally just because he projects so well, point per dollar. Okay, so there is an example of another group that I could set. Now you could go through and you could set a Mahomes in the flex spot, in which case you do the same thing I've been doing, except for choosing the key player of Mahomes in the QB spot. And putting him as a key player. And then you would need to include not just all of the wide receivers, tight ends, whoever you want from the regular positions. You'd also need to include those players in the captain spots if you do that group. And it's just another way you could say, if you have Mahomes in your lineup at all, even in the flex spot, you might want at least one pass catcher with him. I don't think that's something that I'm going to be requiring because both of these quarterbacks rush enough that I think they could get there. Just by rushing, maybe they throw 1 touchdown. If it's Mahomes to Kelsey and Kelsey doesn't do much else, Mahomes gets those points. It's added on to all of his other points. There are ways for, I think, these quarterbacks to be optimal in the flex spot without bringing a pass catcher along with them. It might be thin, but typically if I set that group today, it would be, I would not require at least one. I would probably just give boosts to all of their pass catchers. But I think I'm not going to go through and make that group right now, just for the sake of time. Just want to show you some of the groups that I would consider setting. Another group that you could think about doing is go through and choose all of the pass catchers. So like choose every Chiefs pass catcher in the captain spot. So Kelsey, Juju, MVS. I would skip over running backs in this case because they score on the ground. But the guys who are reliant on the quarterback, you could consider adding all of them and add each of them. So Kelsey as a captain, Juju as a captain, MVS as a captain, Mecole, et cetera, and then choose just Patrick Mahomes at quarterback as the other group, and then you just give a boost to Patrick Mahomes. If you want to say, if I have one of these Chiefs pass catchers in the captain spot, I want to make it more likely that I get Patrick Mahomes in the flex spot, and that's a group that I often do set. I would recommend doing that, but I don't give a big enough boost that it's like I'm going to get Mahomes every time, because you do kind of frequently see pass catchers in the captain spot without their quarterback. It does happen, not extremely frequently, but you'll see it, each year, at least a few times. So it's not something where I'm going to require Mahomes if I have a pass catcher in the captain spot, but I do sometimes like to give the quarterback a little bit of a boost there. But for now, I'm just going to set these two groups. Go back to general, save, and honestly, I don't even know if I need to save this. I think it actually saves automatically. And let's say here, I'll just set a max of 49,000 for now. And then the next step for me, I'll go through and I'll crunch in my projections and see what comes out. All right, so currently I'm getting 41% Mahomes at captain. I haven't dug too deep into who I want to be my captain yet today. I usually will be looking at the single game tool here to kind of help me gauge how much I want Mahomes at captain, how much I want other players at captain. Looks like we have Mahomes projected for 13.5% captain ownership. He's optimal 12.3% of the time. That's kind of what I use to gauge it. But I'll just go through here and I'll show you what I do. So at the captain spot, I'm going to go and in the exposure field, I'm going to edit this. So click this button, click the edit. And rather than 100, I'm going to set a universal cap at 20% for all players in the captain spot. So now I'll have no more than 20% of any player at captain. And I'm going to crunch again. Looks like I also have Harrison Butker currently in the line in my lineups. I'm going to go to my kicker spot. Yeah, it looks like we have a projection in my projection for Harrison Butker. I'm going to change that to 0. I'm also just going to briefly, while I'm here, look at what I'm getting for other players. All right, so I'm getting currently 0% of both defenses. Maybe you're happy with this. I actually like to get some defenses, even in these games with high scores, just because it's a way to get unique. They are each getting 10% projected ownership, so people are playing these defenses, but they are probably less likely to play them against the opposing quarterback, and I am not afraid to play the defenses against the opposing quarterback. So for me, I'd probably go in and give a little bit of boost to each of these projections. For the sake of this, I'm just going to click these thumbs up. This is what I would typically recommend you do, is just give the thumbs up to players you want a little bit more of. All right, we're going to get a lot of Trey McKitty here. I don't know if I want this much Trey McKitty. I probably want a little bit more of these Chiefs tight ends, because they actually saw several snaps last week. Now, maybe it was blowout run, but I'm going to just give a little bit of a boost here. Make sure that, because currently they could not make it into my lineups because I set the minimum threshold at 2. You can see they have that are lower than that. And I'll just go through and, player by player, give little boosts. Maybe I'd end up giving Richard Rodgers a little bit less than these other guys. He projects a little bit worse, but you can kind of see what my thought process is here. Is I want to, give myself an opportunity to get some of these players who are not going to get a ton of ownership. Same thing with wide receivers. Sky Moore. I'm not getting to any Sky Moore currently. I would like to get to some Sky Moore tonight. These guys Guyton, Watson. We don't really know how the breakdown is going to be tonight for the Chargers with Keenan Allen out. I'd like to get some of those guys, so I'm just changing projections here in the my projection column. I would generally recommend giving thumbs up, but again, that won't work for players that have projections under 2. So for those guys, you would need to give a little bit of a boost if you want to play them. Xander Horvath, another example of a guy you need to give a little bit of a boost if you want to play him. Isaiah Pacheco, I'd like to see a little bit of Pacheco in my lineups. I think he's going to be, we haven't projected for 2.9% projected ownership. That seems about right. I've heard a lot of analysis already today, people saying, well, Isaiah Pacheco only played last week in blowout run. He's only going to play if the Chiefs are blowing him out. Maybe that's what happened last week. We've only seen 1 week. He is a rookie. That was his first game ever. Maybe they just wanted to, ease him into it. I don't think you can read that much into what happened last week. Isaiah Pacheco could easily play in the first half this week. We just don't know. So I think I would like to take advantage of the field being overconfident sometimes. And he's a player that I'm probably going to give a little bit of a boost to make sure I get to some. I'd probably want a little bit more of all of these running backs. So I'll probably give them a little bit of a projection boost throughout the day, but I will go through, crunch again. And this is just my process. I'm going to do this over and over. Sometimes I do this 30 times. You probably don't need to get that nuts, but that's kind of the way I approach these slates. Sometimes is I crunch and crunch and crunch until I get to exposure levels I like, lineup constructions that I like. Keep crunching, keep looking at those lineups. But I think that is going to do it for this show. I'm also going to be making a FanDuel Fantasy Cruncher show, and I'm also writing an article right now about this slate. So check that out later. Thanks for watching. Good luck tonight.